I'm here in the Mediterranean beds at Cambridge University Botanic Garden. My name's Colin and I'm one of the trainees here. This part of the garden was interesting to me because it wasn't a style of garden that I'd really encountered before coming from the west of Scotland. It's a style of gardening that's at home in a really low rainfall area like we have here in Cambridge. With climate change, it's a style of gardening that I think could be useful to a lot of people at home. It doesn't require any irrigation. In fact, in general, it's quite a low maintenance style of gardening because you don't really have to add nutrients to the soil or feed it much. Many of the plants are actually happier if they're grown in quite sort of lean, low nutrient soils. The largest piece of maintenance is sort of weeding out plants that become too dominant rather than any major maintenance routines. One of the interesting plants in the garden is the giant fennel, Ferula communis, which has these fantastic lime green umbels. It can grow up to about 2 metres tall and provides amazing structure at this time of year. Another great plant which is used a lot in the Mediterranean beds is the Euphorbia, and that's Euphorbia characis subspecies Wulfenii, which is repeated throughout the beds and gives a nice sense of rhythm and cohesion to them. Its acid green flowers really dominated the beds for the first few weeks of spring. It really helped to sort of hold it together. Within the garden there's a range of annuals and bulbs that add extra interest. Things like the Galactites tomentosa, which is a plant that in the Mediterranean you'd see growing in disturbed soil at the sides of roads, and it's in similar conditions here. It's a really handsome sort of thistle-y looking plant. In autumn there's various bulbs that add extra interest to the garden, like the autumn crocuses and Sternbergia lutea, which is a yellow crocus-like flower which can be flowering as late as November. And then after that, all through the winter, you get the structure of seed heads from various grasses and the herbaceous perennials. Many of the plants in the Mediterranean beds have various adaptations which help them to cope with the Mediterranean climate. Things like smaller leaves to minimise the surface area, and silver leaves and hairs, which all kind of mitigate the effects of heat and light on them and help them to survive and thrive in the Mediterranean climate. One of the key plants which really helps to hold the Mediterranean beds together is the Chaste tree, or the Vitex, which is pollarded every winter and gives fantastic structure in the garden, and it's a sort of sculptural backdrop to some of the looser planting within the garden. For anyone thinking about trying Mediterranean planting at home, I'd say some of the key things to take away are the plants generally need a very well drained site, so if you've got heavy soil, incorporate some grit into it and make sure you're providing a well drained site for them. Make sure you don't cut things back too early and don't be overly tidy. Leave the stems and the herbaceous material for winter structure until maybe February or March, once some of the new material is starting to come through. Although it looks like a naturalistic style of gardening, it does require a certain amount of human intervention, and a lot of that is really sort of judiciously deciding when to weed and when to leave things to self-seed, just to make sure that nothing dominates and that you end up with a sort of balanced overall picture. One of the nicest things about growing these kinds of plants is the scents and smells emitted by their foliage, which can be so evocative and it can really transport you to the Mediterranean. Scent is one of those senses that I think can just be so uplifting and give a real sense of well-being, and at the moment it's a nice bit of escapism.